Dermot, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a million, Andy. Loved it.
Well, it's going to be pre-interview.
Oh, shit.
You are listening to Andy Lee Meets in association with SAYAT. I'm here with Dermot Whelan and we're talking about meditation, something I've tried but struggled to get into.
He wears the black trunks with red trim, his professional record, 34 victories with 2 defeats, 24 wins by way of knockout. Hailing from Limerick, Ireland, introducing Andy Lee.
Thank you for coming, Dermot. Thank you for
Thanks,
joining
Andy.
us. And what I wasn't aware of, obviously you're known for your radio, your stand-up and comedy, meditation.
Yeah.
And what a big role that is and has become in your life.
It sure has. Yeah, for well over 10 years now. It's been kind of one of my pillars of, I suppose, pillars of well-being sounds a bit arsey, but it's been something that I've leaned on quite a lot, you know, and it works. It just works for me. Like, I'm sure when you were training, you know, in your things, you had things that you just had to lean on, that you had to be in that space to get your mind straight, and meditation has definitely become that for me, although I've never held a boxing title, not officially anyway.
Yeah, but finding meditation, can you tell us that story, how you came to, well, how you first got into it? And
it was through a couple of wake-up calls, actually. In about 2007, I was doing a lot. I had stand-up going. I was a couple of years in stand-up, so I was coming up through the ranks pretty quickly. I was doing little bits of TV. I was presenting a breakfast show on the radio, which had me up at 4:30 a.m. And at night time, I was in the comedy clubs. I started to have a family, my wife, so we had small babies at home. And it was, I had like no stress management system whatsoever in place, other than what most Irish people would have, and that is have a pint or open a bottle of wine and sure, it'll be grand. And instead of resting at the weekend, I would just go out and kind of distract rather than relax.
do
you
more
know?
damage.
Exactly, yeah.
You know,
so you're coming into a new week.
Small, yeah, you get a blowout, so you have like a small benefit, you have the small blowout and then there's still the
short-term gain.
Small benefit, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not anti-booze. I just, as a health management system, it's not entirely successful long-term. So I was driving to Kilkenny, the Kilkenny Cat Laughs Comedy Festival, and this was a big deal for me. I was only a couple of years in it. Big names from around the world had performed there, like Bill Murray, all the guys you'd see on UK TV, you know, the Tommy Tiernans, Dylan Morans, all these guys. So for me, it was a big deal, and I suppose maybe probably didn't believe in myself a whole amount in terms of performing on stage. I had a very loud inner critic at that time that would just chip away at me, just keep picking holes in my subconscious. Which I wasn't aware of. I just presumed everybody beat themselves up, you know. So I was driving to the festival and I remember feeling really weird, and it was like the invisible man had opened the door of the car and just got in and sat on my lap. If you can imagine the sort of weight of another human sitting on top of you. So I feel it on my belly and on my chest, and I was like, what is this? So I thought, I'm probably just hungover because I'd been out the night before. Drinking white wine, which is what I call argument juice. It's basically like, I shouldn't be drinking white wine. So anyway, I just started feeling really weird, and then I thought, I'm gonna have to pull the car over here. So I pulled the car over. I was kind of gasping for breath. Then I got these really bad pains across my chest, and I thought, here we go, I'm a statistic. I'm having a heart attack or a stroke, this is it. And I remember lying down on the side of the road, and I was in the driveway of one of those real Irish bungalows. Yeah. And it had those eagles on the pillar, you know, those ones, like real statement pillars. And the pebble dash wall and that beautiful Irish bungalow, elegant look. And I just thought, man, this is where I'm going to die, under an eagle pillar, near Mullinavat. This is this is the warrior's death I had anticipated and hoped for all these years. But it was quite terrifying, actually. You know, like I don't know if if any of your viewers or listeners have had an anxiety attack. I certainly hadn't up until that point, and it's quite terrifying because you're gasping for breath, you're in pain, and the more you kind of resist it, the worse it gets. So I started hyperventilating, which meant that all my hands went into spasm and my jaw went into spasm and my tongue went into spasm, so I couldn't talk. So I remember my brother-in-law, who had pulled in behind me, I got him to dial my wife, and I was like ringing to say, you know, good luck, I'm out of here, I may not make it. Except I couldn't talk, so because my jaw had seized up, so I was like going, okay. So she's like, what?
I know.
Like, seriously, you're drunk already? Like, you only just arrived at the festival, surely. So,
but no, that, like, you're saying that quite, like, you're in it quite, I don't know, joyfully now, but like, that must have been harrowing, or to come to terms with it. Oh, did you find it quite, were you like, this is it, to just accept it?
I think if you ever had an accident or something like that, you immediately sort of switch into, well, look, this is just what's happening. Yeah. And I thought that if I wasn't going to die, there was something seriously wrong with me. So an ambulance came anyway. And I got into the ambulance and they kind of did a few checks, and then they gave me a brown paper bag and said, breathe into that.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? I knew the health service is strapped for cash, but this is the best. Yeah. No, none of this, clear, no, just a bag. Yeah, so I just breathed into that, and then all the spasms eased off because my carbon dioxide oxygen ratio was way out of whack. So I went into the hospital and they put monitors on me and did some tests and said, you're actually really healthy, you've had a panic attack. And I was like, what is that? I didn't know people could have those things. So I do remember they were like, look, just please take it easy. You know, this is a wake-up call now, so you need to address what's happening in your life. And I went, absolutely, and pulled off the monitors and went into town and did 2 gigs that night. So I
absolutely killed.
Yeah, and I knew 10-minute set on panic attacks.
Yeah.
But I do remember, though, saying it to a good few other people and some comedians and that, like, I had something called a panic attack. And loads of them went, oh yeah, I've had one of those. And I remember thinking, why does nobody mention this? Like, people are freaking out thinking they're dying, but then they don't tell anyone, you know? Yeah. So that was a bit of a wake-up call for me. So down the line then I met a woman who wanted me to launch her book, a great friend of mine called Siobhan McKenna, and she'd just written a novel, and she asked me to MC her book launch. And I had heard that actually in her spare time she was a meditation teacher. So I arranged a swap with her because I knew that I had to try and find something that was going to help me just level all my sort of cockpit dials out a little bit, and so we did a swap, and she taught me meditation for an hour, and I kind of took it from there. So then I became a teacher later on. Yeah, but
from practicing to becoming a teacher, it's a big step, isn't it? It's a huge leap.
It is, and I suppose I got kind of comfortable. You know, meditation is a great tool, and we can talk about I fell in love with the science of it, and we can talk about that. But it's like training in the gym, which is something you know so well. You can't just turn up when you want. You can't turn up when you feel like it. Meditation is something, you're training your brain. It's scientifically proven to physically change the shape of your brain if you do it on a regular basis, i.e. every day, ideally twice a day. It does require discipline. Yeah. So even after I found a bit of comfort and release from it, and I got it,
was the comfort and release immediate? Or did it take
pretty
work?
Much, yeah. I realized something, just that, stress can be beneficial for us in short periods, in short bursts. You were certainly under stress when you were in a bout, but you needed all those things that were happening in your body when those stress hormones and your heart rate and blood pressure and all those things were doing what they're meant to do under stress. You needed all that to think and perform better. What I wasn't doing was turning off my stress response. I was just rolling from one event to another. And I didn't have any of the tools other than booze to briefly shut that off, you know, like for all of us, stress is like a house alarm or a guard dog that just keeps going off. And it's great when we need it, you know, we need, if there's an intruder coming, we need that, you know. But the problem arises of when we don't have the tools to turn off that alarm. And that's what I was doing. And I was just rolling and just wearing myself out. And what happens then, your sleep gets affected and your energy levels drop and your mood is all over the place and you're over emotional, you're reacting to everything. So once I learned these tricks to sort of shut that off, even momentarily, then I immediately started to benefit from it. I started to sleep better, all those things. But what happened over time, like anything, we're all human, I started to sort of tell everyone I was meditating and tell myself I was meditating, but actually a week might have gone by where I hadn't done it. And pretty much soon enough, as soon as you start pouring in all the ingredients of busy life and, you know, kids getting older and new jobs and new stresses, you start to create these perfect storm of events again, you know. And I never had another panic attack, but I could feel the stress coming in, and how that manifested for me, and a lot of people can relate to this, is kind of, first of all, crappy sleep. So I would fall asleep because I was exhausted all the time, but I would wake up at 3:10 in the morning, like constantly, like every single night, like I'd set an alarm. And I would start to think and worry about the most inane stuff, you know, stuff that wasn't really important. But once your brain gets into that cycle of worrying, but it was because I wasn't turning off my stress response, and those stress hormones were just waking me up in the night going, you've had a bit of rest, you've enough to keep you going now, but we need to start worrying about stuff because there's a threat in our surroundings somewhere. And so I wasn't, then, you know, if you're not getting enough sleep, then everything starts to you know, fail. You know, your mood, you're erratic, you're probably ratty. I was irritable, I was more anxious, I was more emotional, I couldn't think clearly. The big thing for me was brain fog. I just couldn't think clearly. It was like there was just a mist sitting there. I thought if I got another email, my head would roll off my shoulders. So all these things just start to build up till you just feel really overwhelmed. And that was at the point where I went, about 5 years ago, I said, look, I'm dipping in and out of this stuff. Like, what do I want? Do I want to be a nervous wreck for the rest of my life? You know, or do I want to actually double down on this meditation stuff that I know works? You know, I've seen enough of the science around it. I've seen enough testimonials. I've spoken to enough people. Let's go a little bit deeper. So I decided, look, I'll just do the teacher training, and at least that will deepen my knowledge, so that I will immerse myself in this whole thing. And then, with no particular intention of teaching, but once I'd finished that whole process, I trained over in the States with one of the leading corporate stress management experts over there, a chap called David G. And once I finished with him, I thought, you know what, this stuff, I don't know, you just want to share it with people, you know. And I had already been sort of trying to help friends and family with it, with the little that I knew. So I thought, well, actually, why don't I try and use my skills as a communicator, as a comedian, to try and deliver this stuff in a way that's not up its own arse, you know. Because I think a lot of the stuff, meditation or anything that blends into that spiritual area, I think sometimes it can take itself a bit too seriously, and everyone's wearing white linen and has their hair in a man bun, and you're like, sorry, Russell Brand.
Very touchy.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just think, you know, it's got to be accessible for people, particularly men, you know, like, because we're slow to come forward and talk about stuff.
Has it helped you with your performance in terms of stand-up and radio presenting or interviewing or being an interviewee?
It has helped me in terms of it has focused and made me more enjoy what I'm already doing, you know, and I've made some sort of minor tweaks. Like, we're in the 3 Arena now, and actually one of the pivotal moments for me was here, because I did a comedy show, a stand-up show with Dave, my co-host, here on a night with a bunch of comedians on the bill, and there was 10,000 people there. And it was great, you know, and I really enjoyed it. But I was kind of like, meh, driving home. That was interesting. The next day, I taught meditation to 30 people in an insurance company around the corner. And I walked out of there like I was walking on air, like I had just, you know, given my speech from the White House. You know, it was...
Why?
I think was because the first time there was just a bit more essence to what I was saying. It wasn't just blather, and not that all stand-up is blather, but for me it kind of was. It had hit that point where I was just, I felt too much like a jester, you know, and just sort of being giddy and jumping around. And this kind of, I was still using all the skills I'd learned, but I was able to give it a little, there was a message in there,
You're
you know, there was
people.
Yeah, there was a truth to it, and it was coming from a very real place for me, because I'd lived all this stuff, you know, and that had never really come into my stand-up. I talked about having kids and stuff, but it's all sort of surface stuff. So I realized that I just needed something that was going to allow me to keep doing what I do well, but also to actually have a message in there. And even if 1 out of the 30 got something out of it, that seemed to be enough for me, even more than 10,000 people having a laugh, you know.
Yeah, and you talked about the science and how that interests you.
Yeah.
Give us some examples of the benefits of meditation.
Well, I mentioned your brain changing shape, and there's a study, a pivotal study at this stage from 2012 that came out of the University of Massachusetts and Massachusetts General Hospital, and they teamed up with Harvard, and they did a study where they got a bunch of people who had never meditated before, and they had a control group as well who didn't go through the meditation, and basically they did less than a half an hour's meditation every day for 56 days, and that's less than 2 months, so 8 weeks. And they scanned their bodies and brains throughout the whole process. And of course, at the end, they expected to find that they had lower blood pressure and lower heart rate and less stress hormones and all those kind of things, increased growth hormones, increased sex hormones, all the things that they kind of knew anyway. But what they didn't expect was that the shape of their brains had actually changed, in that the amygdala, the part of our brain that's responsible for anxious thoughts or fearful thoughts or angry thoughts, that had actually shrunk in size. And then conversely, the parts of their brain responsible for self-awareness, logical thinking, memory forming, that had actually all grown in size. It was literally more grey matter. So for me, I heard that and I was like, well, how can I continue to have as much, as many fearful or anxious or negative thoughts about myself if the part of the brain that's actually creating those thoughts is shrinking? It's less of it.
Yeah.
So for me, that was a bit of an eye opener, So that's something that I just thought, well, look, if I can do it, if people can do it for a small amount of time every day for a relatively short period, you can really see results,
No, after I retired, it was probably, probably a year and a half after I retired. My wife had done a course in meditation. She really liked it, so she signed me up for it. But to be honest with you, I was reluctant. I was reluctant to embrace it, and I did go. I went to the classes simply to try it, and also not to appease her, but to try and just see. Cause
you did it to please your wife.
Having no
You're kidding, nobody.
Having no outlet, with boxing, the exercise is kind of, it's
yeah.
When that's just taken away. So I went, but I found it very hard to have the discipline and the focus, the wandering mind during the meditation. I'd find, before you realize you're thinking about, the shopping or what am I going to watch on TV or blah blah blah. I really struggled with the discipline of meditation.
Yeah. See, I suppose I would find that interesting in that all of your training in your professional career was all about discipline and was all about turning up. And even if the only bad session you can have is the one you don't turn up for. Like I think it's, a lot of people like myself might find that surprising, but in another way I don't, because even the science around that, a lot of people aren't comfortable sitting with themselves. They did an amazing study in Virginia where they had they got hundreds of people, and all they had to do was sit in a room for 15 minutes by themselves, and that was it. They just had to sit there for 15 minutes. They took their phones off them, took away all the distractions. There was hardly any furniture in the room. So they did leave one thing on the table, and that was a button. And if you press the button, you would administer an electric shock to yourself. And they just said, look, you can sit in the room for 15 minutes. That's all you got to do in this study. You can press that button if you want. It will electrocute you. it's up to you. You don't have to press it if you don't want to. Obviously, it will inflict pain. So they do the study. 67% of men electrocuted themselves in the 15 minutes. Like 67%. 25% of women did it. One guy did it 195 times in 15 minutes. So, I kind of use that study, if I'm teaching, to reassure people that, we are so trained out of being by ourselves. When we're kids, we do it naturally all the time. When you look at small kids, my own kids, they'll remove themselves from a situation and just go and play by themselves, shut the bedroom door, and you can hear them playing away. And we kind of lose that skill as we get older. So to be alone with our own thoughts for a lot of people is unbearable. And that's why we reach for the distractions of our phones and that. So it's just about training ourselves back into that situation where not only can we cope with it, we actually start to really look forward to and depend on that time, even if it's 16 seconds. I teach a 16-second meditation. Even if it's just that, then you're at least normalizing time with yourself and by yourself, but you're also turning off that stress response, and that's what allows us the chance to everything to calm down.
Because in that course it was a group thing, and like one of the mantras was we had to say, and I can't remember the exact words, was something like "I am loved" and "I am worthy" or something, and like quite a number of the class had difficulty even saying that to themselves, within like just repeating that to themselves, whatever it was, I can't remember. 2 or 3 minutes, but also like that not being, I had Cora Staunton, we interviewed last week, and we both spoke, I think it was even off camera, about long haul flights, which and how lonely and tough they can be, because you just have time by yourself and time to think, and just it is that is the hardest, one of the hardest parts of it, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Do you think, like, not that this is a new age thing, meditation's been around for centuries, but like it's coming, it's in lieu of religion now. Like, years ago people would have went to mass. Like I go to mass, I try to go once a week, but probably once every couple of weeks now. And I find that going in and sitting down and being by yourself, or being with people who are, just expressing gratitude, or having that, even if it's only the 2 or 3 minutes where you kind of have that silence in the mass, that kind of does it for me. Always come out feeling good. But I think, would you say that, like, if people have turned against religion, I think greatly in this country, like it's more and more and more. But do you think it's in lieu of that? Like it's.
Yeah, I think it certainly is. I mean, meditation can be religious or spiritual if you want it to be. Alternatively, you can look on it just like it's the gym for your brain. It's whatever you want to get from it. But certainly, I think there is a shift towards that space, that spiritual space, because, as you say, people aren't going to mass anymore. Even if you were dragged to mass as a kid, it's still normalized an hour in your week that was for something greater than you.
Yeah.
And that, even if you bought into it 100%, or you were kind of a doubting Thomas on the sidelines, it still normalized that in a community where people came together to acknowledge that, you know what, outside all the crap we're dealing with, there's something a bit bigger.
Yeah.
And even that in itself gives people a sense of relief and a sense of connection and reassurance that they're not on their own. So when you do take that out, other things will fill the gap. Sometimes it's, yoga or that whole spiritual side. Other times it's something a bit more destructive, like addictions or something like that. So, I suppose for me, a thing that annoys me sometimes, and I kind of touched on it, is the spiritual nature of what a lot of people see online isn't necessarily representative, and it turns a lot of people off. I mean, I'm sure you had preconceptions when you went to this meditation class, and some guy who you probably wouldn't go for a pint with is telling you to tell yourself in front of other people that you feel loved, and you're like, I am not coming back here again.
Yeah.
Whereas, and if you look on Instagram, it's always some, beautiful person sitting like this, in white linen on the jetty of a lake, and you're thinking, well, that's bullshit for a start, because her boyfriend's behind her taking the picture. So how connected to spirit is she right now?
Yeah.
Do I look okay? And men do it as well.
That's a turn off for me as well. I'm always a bit suspicious of, you know, these gurus, you know, who, it's all online as well, like, you know, and posting, they're like soft capitalists to me, you know, they're trying to, I don't know, sell you something. They're always trying to sell you something as well, and it's like, you know, but here behind it, I'm here for you, you know, I can help you, and this and that. And sometimes, a lot of the time, people actually do really need help. They're like the most vulnerable people are being targeted by these, and it is, isn't it, by these gurus, you know, it's, I've always been, I'm always suspicious of that type of thing, yeah.
But if you think about, we're trained to think like that. I mean, any organized religion, it always keeps the power outside of you. You know, the fact that we did turn up at a church, and you know, it's always, you know, the power is here and above you, and you know, you're a bold sinner now, and you've messed up even before you were born.
Yeah.
So it's only natural, I think, that
I never say that part of Mass.
It can't be a la carte now, Andy. You can't pick and choose.
That's more of a Protestant way of doing things, isn't it?
But yeah, I mean, it's normal that people having, you know, we've always been taught that you know, the greatness is beyond us, is outside us, so we have to either worship a person or something bigger. But I suppose, you know, I'm not, if people want to go into that whole spiritual side of it, that's fantastic, and certainly there are elements of it that I do like and I'm very comfortable around, and my kids love the ritual of all that, and kids in general love candles and incense and all those kinds of things. It kind of, they just like the ritual, and they get into it a bit more. But for me, again, particularly with men, if we're going to get people getting into this and realizing, look, something's not quite right for me. You know, this feeling, as one guy in a bar in Cork told me, who he had everything going for him, he just said, look, I'm happy, but I'm not happy. You know, and that really resonated with me, because he had the wife and the kids and the business and everything. He just literally signed a big deal that day. Everything was rocking. He ticked the boxes that, you know, our own internal scorekeepers go, you know, have you got this by now? Have you got that by now? He had done it all. And he was like, I'm happy, but I'm not happy. And so many of us walk around with that feeling of meh. You know, we don't really want to talk about it because it sounds like moaning, and we don't want to be ungrateful. But at the same time, we feel like we're kind of 6 out of 10, and we know we would like to and probably could do better, but we just don't know what to do. And a lot of the time, it's just small changes. Getting quiet for a few minutes a day, turning off that stress response alarm for a little bit longer each day, and just giving yourself that chance to have that literally a little bit of space. And even though that sounds untangible and unsatisfying, it's incredibly effective. Like, I had a guy who contacted me, he was trying my 16-second meditation, which was taught to me by my teacher, David G. And that's literally a 16-second meditation. And he was giddy with excitement because he said, I'm singing in the shower again. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, I'm singing in the shower. At the start of COVID, the pressures of work, the pressures of family, money, I was worn down, you know, and like I described myself, he was not sleeping properly. He was worked up. He was, a big thing for him was that he was reacting around the people that he loved, so being snappy, irritable at home, and he could hear himself, almost like a lot of us have that kind of out of body, you can hear yourself being snarky and you're like, oh my God, what are you doing? And that's how he was acting, and he didn't feel himself. He started doing the 16-second meditation, and he said within 2 weeks, he had started singing in the shower again. And for him, that was his marker, because he'd stopped singing in the shower when he wasn't himself. But for him, that represented him feeling well in himself, you know, an 8 out of 10 day, as opposed to a 6, you know? So it's the small changes that we make can help us reconnect with whatever represents being ourselves to us.
And just to go back to you, like, do you coming out and speaking about this, was that a big step? You know, because people would pigeonhole you into being a comedian, radio presenter, and now this is completely different. Meditation and not spirituality, but you know, the mindfulness. Did you ever feel any apprehension about openly talking about it?
Yeah, I suppose, because I was aware of the same preconceptions I had. I mean, when I started meditating, I couldn't even say the word. I remember saying to my wife, I'm going upstairs to I'm meditating. You know, God knows what she thought I was doing in the bedroom. You know, because she was already into all this stuff, you know, but
Really,
I just hadn't, it just hadn't resonated with me, you know. So, yeah, I suppose I was a little bit reticent to start talking about it, or you start thinking about what, you know, preconceptions people may have about me, but actually, you know, it ties back into that talk that I gave to the insurance company people. I have absolutely no doubt that this is what I want to do, and when you hit that point, not that I want to be evangelistic about it and change everyone's life, I just want to let people know the facts and the science, and that actually you don't have to blow up your whole life to get a new perspective. You know, a lot of people are like, well, that's it. They read articles, you know, in magazines about people who quit their jobs dramatically. And I walked into my boss's office and I told him to stick his accountancy gig, you know, and I went to India and then I grew my hair and everything worked out. Like, we don't have to blow up our lives. That's a last resort. We don't have to blow up our relationships, you know, unless you've realized that that actually is the only way out. A lot of the time, just shifting a little bit of perspective around ourselves, you know, why we're doing what we're doing every day, and taking those moments in the day just to get quiet with yourself, a lot of the time that's enough. Like, 16-second meditation had this guy singing in the shower again, and completely changed his perspective, is the way he spoke to his family, his feelings of gratitude around his family, and whatever work was going to come his way, whatever money he happened to have in the bank, everything shifted. So I don't I kind of don't worry about what people want to think about that side of stuff, because it's part of my mission as well to debunk all the crap around it.
These are anxious times, aren't they? They are, like,
Yeah.
everywhere you look, it's doom and gloom.
Yeah, and I think people just, like, we're so well trained in terms of our physical body. People go, do you know what, I'm feeling a bit chunky, a bit sluggish, you know, not myself. Well, I know that if I go to the gym or go for a run or cycle or whatever, or swim, whatever it is, that I feel better, because that's in my sort of physical toolbox. I know what to do there. But I think what the pandemic kind of highlighted or amplified was that when it came to our mental well-being and our mental fitness and our general state of ease with ourselves, for a lot of us, a lot of people didn't have those tools to reach for, and oftentimes it's something really simple. It's a simple breathing meditation. It's having an app on your phone that guides you through a meditation, you know, if you don't know what you're doing. You know, it could even be knowing that you need to go out and walk. You know, you need to sit down and play the guitar, whatever your natural meditation is, anything that pulls you into that present moment, that kind of mindfulness that you hear people talk about, you know. You know, mindfulness is anything that pulls you into that present moment. So even if you don't want to go near the term meditation, if it just pisses you off or freaks you out or makes you confused, you just do something that you know will make you lose track of time. So maybe it's playing an instrument, maybe it's pounding a bag, maybe it's playing with your dog, maybe it's playing with your baby, like whatever it is. As long as you can put those kinds of pattern interrupts, as they're called, into your day, then that will help. But just for people to have something in that emotional toolbox, that mental toolbox that they can reach for.
And I guess, like, what's the downside? There probably is no downside.
Well, there is none, and sometimes the fact that it's free and easy puts people off. Yeah. Like, you can be damn sure if you put a list of the proven scientific benefits of meditation or other particular breathing exercises, like any pharmaceutical company, if they thought they could corner that market, they would be all over it, and we'd probably be more willing to pay for it, because we're used to paying for something outside of ourselves to fix a problem within ourselves.
If people want to get in touch with you or read more about it, where can they find information?
On my website, dermotwhelan.com, I've got a load of information up there. I have free guided meditations up there, so if somebody can stand listening to my voice, then they can just click play on those. I have a beginner's meditation there. I've got one for anxiety and fear, one for sleep and relaxation, and a few family meditation there as well. So nice. It's all free, dermotwhelan.com.
you've mentioned the 16-second meditation. Would you mind running us through it while we're here?
Sure, absolutely. So the idea is that you're breathing in to a count of 4, then you're holding that breath in your belly to a count of 4, then you let the breath out to a count of 4, and then you hold that breath out for a count of 4. So there's your 16 seconds, 4 sets of 4. Before we do the 16 seconds, just want to do belly breathing with you, because a lot of us spend a lot of our day breathing shallowly into the top of our breath. So as a trained athlete, you would have been very familiar with breathing from your diaphragm and making the most out of each breath. So for anyone who doesn't know that, if you just put your hand on your belly, and we're going to breathe in through our nose. So take a nice, long, slow, deep breath in through your nose. And just feel your belly rise underneath your hand. If you like, you can put your hand on your chest. And when you're breathing in, you don't want the one on your chest to move, but you want the one on your belly to rise up. So nice, long, slow, deep breath in. Feel the belly rise up, and then gently let that go. So that in itself is a very handy mechanism, even if you want to get back to sleep or fall asleep. Kids really like it too. That's belly breathing. Just deep breaths in through the nose, feel the belly expand, and then gently let that go. So 16 seconds is we're breathing in through our nose, into our bellies, and we hold it for 4. We breathe in for 4, we hold it for 4, we let it go out for 4, and we hold it out for 4. So when you're ready, if you want, you can close your eyes, get nice and comfy. Before we start, we'll just take a nice, long, slow, deep breath in, into the belly. Hold that for a moment, and then let that go. Really good. So we're going to do our 16-second breathing technique now. And when you're ready, breathe in through the nose, down into the belly. 2, 3, 4. Now hold that in your belly to a count of 4. 3, 4. Now gently let that breath go back out, feeling your belly drop, watching the breath go back out. 3, 4. And then hold that breath out for another 4. 2, 3, 4. Now just breathing normally. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. So that's a 16-second meditation. Probably feeling a little bit chill after that, are you?
Yeah, no, even the first bit was more relaxing, yeah.
So the belly breathing, 16-second meditation, you can do them anywhere. And we're doing a lot of queuing at the moment for stuff. You can do them while you're standing in a queue. You can do it while you're sitting in the car, obviously keeping your eyes open. You can do it while you're waiting for anything, you know. I was actually in Mass with my mother yesterday, and I'm not particularly religious anymore, but for me, I'm thinking, yes, 40 minutes of just focusing on my breath, you know, so I float out of there. Everyone thinks I'm, going to be a priest. Yeah. The big smile on my face.
Thanks very much, Dermot.
Thanks, Andy.